Joining Canada and Holland, Ireland is set to target farmers with carbon emission cuts as well. So slowly but surely we see it spreading throughout the whole Western world, and I'd like to know how people are going to live and what they're going to eat. The Irish government is set to impose an emissions cut of around 28%, just to say a third of the farmers, according to reports, as part of the World Economic Forum's Great Reset agenda for humanity. Irish leaders are joining other counterparts in the Netherlands and Canada, phasing out farms and endangering the global food shortage even worse. Canada's Justin Trudeau already announced he's moving forward ahead with the WEF's plan to abolish farms, that is 30% by the year 2030. He said he plans to reduce carbon fertilizer use, which will in turn bankrupt farmers. Meanwhile, Dutch farmers have been protesting for weeks after the government instituted plans to bankrupt them and disrupt food supplies in Europe. And we know that Holland supplies Europe with 40% of its food. So what happens? That's going to turn into what? 30%. It's going to, and instead of 40%, they'll be getting what? 20 to 30%. Half of what they're getting now. Prime Minister Mark Rutte of Holland is one of WEF's young global leaders who's vowed to help usher in the Great Reset. Breitbart reports farmers in Ireland may soon be forced to make potentially damaging changes to their businesses as climate alarmist ministers within Ireland's government set to cut the sector's emissions by around 28%. Officials within the Irish government have been haggling over how badly to hammer the country's farmers with green legislation for some time, despite visceral reactions from farmers in fellow EU member states and the Netherlands to the curbing of nitrogen emissions due to the damage the EU-inspired restrictions will cause to their businesses. According to the report by The Times, Ireland's Minister of Agriculture, Charlie McConalogue, has already agreed to force a cut of either 27 or 28%, let's say 30%, on a third of the country's farming sector, a move that will cause significant disruptions to local businesses, obviously. However, the publication also claims that there's still significant pressure on McConalogue to, I can't even say that name, to implement a curb of 30%, a measure the head of one of the country's largest farming organizations said would result in a massive cut in cattle numbers in the country. A target of 30% would result in significant reduced production, which could devastate the farming sector in Ireland. Irish Farmers Association President Tim Cullinan previously said regarding this. Even at the lower 28% estimate, one of the Irish government's own officials emphasized that it would not be business as usual, with such a measure requiring drastic changes in Irish farming. He said the targets assigned to each sector must be proportionate and reflective of the overall contribution. Department of Agriculture Chief Bill Callahan reportedly told Parliamentary Committee last week. He said, unlike in other sectors where technologies or lifestyle changes can be utilized, there are no silver bullet solutions to reducing emissions from the agriculture and land use sector, he said. Ireland's massive push to see agriculture emissions cut by over a quarter comes as Netherlands see roads and distribution centers blocked by farmers who claim that they are having their livelihoods obliterated by their country's enforcement of EU green targets. Let's remember what the Rutte government of Holland said. He says these farmers that close down have to promise never to go back to farming. I'd like to know who's going to feed people. You know, there are a few things that are very necessary for people in every country, in every government. Number one is you have to eat every day. That's food. That's the agriculture community. And you have to eat especially protein, meat. And number two is education. Number three is health. Those things you can't live without. And I guess the fourth would be, you know, your dwelling. Now, the Dutch government is pushing to cut nitrogen emissions in some areas by 95%, a move that would result in as many as 30% of the country's livestock farms being forced to close. And despite such devastating impact, the government has pushed on with an enforcement describing the closures as simply an unavoidable transition as part of the EU's reforms. For some reason, they are not coming after the airlines or other industries that actually are contributors to these emissions from the Dutch farmers. Okay, so the flights are not being decreased by 30%. So a political commentator, Eva Varingerbrok, told Breitbart News during an interview with network editor-in-chief Alex Marlow, they're saying that the farmers need to give up 30% of their land by 2030, and for a lot of these farmers that means they will go completely out of business depending on where they are in the country, and that land goes to the state. Surprise, surprise, she went on to say. Our farmers are being expropriated and the state is stealing their land, and oftentimes these are businesses that they have had in their families for centuries on end because the farming industry in Netherlands is very strong, she explained. And she said, she noted that the links the country's Prime Minister Mark Rutte has with the World Economic Forum. This is by Niamh Harris on News Punch. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.